Talk about the one that got away. I kept the camera off because I was thinking, hey, nobody wants to see me fill up my fuel tank. But in so doing, I missed like one of the most egregious red light runners I've ever seen. Guy went flying through, narrowly missing a pedestrian, like well after red light. Like the other cars were, starting and exceeding the speed limit at the same time. It was the most beautiful display of poor driving I think I've seen. I suppose I could tell you about the crash contest. The contest is over officially. I went and had a look at the winners today, this morning, and there is, as far as there's like two contests, right? There was the one for the guess how much the repairs are going to cost, and then there was the one for whose fault is it. For the repairs one, there's only one victor. There was almost two, but one of the guys guessed. Although he initially guessed a closer amount, he then followed it up with plus. He said it would cost $2,100 plus. Plus labor. So in my mind, that's more than 21. That's 2,100 plus whatever the labor costs are, which is way too much. But the next closest guy said $2,000 all up, and the actual amount was 2,100 and change, if you can believe it, all up. So that guy wins. I think I have his name here. No, not handy. We'll do that later. I'll announce the names later. But yeah, so I have one possible victor for that. For the who is at fault contest, that one was a little trickier. I have actually three correct responses on that one. And so that one I'm gonna have to like toss some coins or something to figure out who's getting the Canadian beaver. I'd like to give Canadian beaver to all of you guys, but it's not a limitless supply, Canadian beaver. Let me tell you. I've spent most of my life in this country, and I can tell you unequivocally, especially quality Canadian beaver. So the finding of ICBC was 100% my fault in the accident. And initially, the adjuster told me, by way of reasoning for her decision, that I was essentially straddling the line. I was, basically the lane splitting argument, right? And so I showed her a picture after the crash that shows that the bike is clearly 2 to 3 feet from, on the correct side of the line. And I said, well, how, in what way was I straddling the line? I was fully within the bounds of my lane the entire time. I also said, if you look at the Motor Vehicle Act of British Columbia, there's nothing in there that says you cannot go by a parked car in your lane. Whereas there is entries in the Motor Vehicle Act that say you can't, for instance, turn without signaling, change lanes without ensuring that there's no traffic conflicts, turn without ensuring there's no traffic conflicts, and also you're not allowed to turn in any other lane but the lane nearest the curb. So in all these ways, I said I can see three things that the driver did wrong according to the Motor Vehicle Act. but there's nothing that I did wrong according to the Motor Vehicle Act. So why is it that it's 100% my fault? So after doing that, she sent back a rather lengthy list of, Motor Vehicle Act entries, or I don't know what they call them, Motor Vehicle Act clauses, all of which were unapplicable, and I, basically detailed each one of them why they were not applicable to this situation. I won't bore you with the details, but it was quite obvious that it was just like some sort of canned response they give to every motorcyclist or something. So I did that. Weird. I think I'll stop here. That's all I'm saying to you guys. So yeah, I did that, and then I told her I don't really agree with this, and I'd like like to go through some sort of appeal process. The first stage of which is to talk to her manager, essentially. So the manager called me, and the manager had this logic that really is unassailable. It went as follows. You were involved in a traffic accident. A car hit you. Therefore, you must have been in a dangerous place. And because you were in a dangerous place, you must have put yourself in a dangerous place. Therefore, you are at fault. Which I think equally applies if I had been like sitting at home in front of my television in my living room, and a car came crashing through my wall and hit me. I think you could make the same argument that I was at fault. But anyway, so I disagree with her, but at the end of the day, my only recourse now is to they have another appeal thing where there's like an outside party connected with ICBC that can review the case. But since I reported to them that I had like my hip and my lower back were sore for, I told them we were sore for 3 days after the crash, they consider that to be a possible injury or whatever. So because there's a possible injury, that appeal process is not not available to me. So the only course is to go to small claims, essentially. So as it happens, I have a couple friends who are they're ICBC. Well, they're ICBC attorneys. They do motor vehicle accident work. They're lawyers. I think that's about the most roundabout way I could have said that. But so I put it to them. What do you think would happen if I went to small claims? And what I was told was basically the most likely outcome, like say 60% chance, it will be exactly the same. 20% of the if you argue well, you have maybe a 20% chance of getting that to a 25% in your favor, and 25% the driver's fault and 75% my fault. And if you're absolutely brilliant in your arguments, you might get it to 50-50, but that's like the best possible outcome. And the cost of taking it is a couple $100. So essentially, if I get the best possible result, the process would essentially pay for itself, but that's very unlikely, right? It's like 80% chance against that. So he says there's really no point in doing that, pursuing a legal thing, unless of course there's some sort of significant injury associated with it, right? Which there isn't, because that's an interesting point, is that if there's an injury, you only get to claim, obviously, if you weren't at fault, right? If you're 100% at fault, then you can't make an injury claim, essentially, because you'd have to sue yourself, essentially. So so I put it to my lawyer friend, how is it that that I didn't break any Motor Vehicle Act clauses and the other guy did, and yet I am 100% to blame. And his answer was that what the adjuster does is they don't go strictly by the Motor Vehicle Act. They look at what he calls the totality of the incident and determine who they feel is at heart. So it's at fault. So it's entirely subjective, essentially. And so the reality is that all of the people that are looking at your case or reviewing your case, they all drive cars. None of them ride motorcycles. And so from their viewpoint, anything that a motorcycle does is almost de facto dangerous, right? And so that's the reason why they never, if ever, fine for the motorcyclists. And he said it might also be possible that because there's an injury, that might also lead them to kind of lean in the direction of making it 100% my fault, such that there would be no possible claim that I could make if I were actually injured, in some serious manner, a manner serious enough to warrant going to court, obviously. So that's basically it. If you're involved in a motor vehicle accident on a motorcycle in British Columbia, if you're doing something that is not exactly what a car would be doing, you're basically screwed. If it's two motorcycles that collide, I'm not sure what they do. Like, presumably their heads explode if that turns out to be the case. The hell's the road? Here it is. Yeah, so that's a very long-winded description of how the whole freaking thing works. Basically, don't have an accident if you're on a motorcycle. That's my recommendation. And if you do, make sure whatever you're doing is exactly what a car would be doing. Don't strike that. It has to be what a car is supposed to be doing, because cars obviously split lanes as well. But you have to not only be doing what a car would do, but what a car with a driver who is obsessed with following every square inch of the Motor Vehicle Act. If you do that, you will have maybe only a slight disadvantage when it comes to determining who is at fault. I really did think that by taking the rain gear I would be assured of not actually getting any rain. So the person who guessed the correct price for the repairs was Bad Atheist. The actual repairs are $2,168.07, and Bad Atheist predicted $2,000, which was the closest. As far as guessing the liability, there were three winners: the Silent Biker, PDX David, and Anocade. So for the last three, what I'm going to do is just I'm going to flip a coin. So since there's three, what I'll do is I'll flip a coin, and if it's the queen, then you win, and if it's the bear, you lose. And if there's two winners, then we'll have a runoff to see who actually gets the beaver. So for the Silent Biker is out. I can hardly read this now. PDX David is in. And Anocade is out. So the winner is PDX David. So PDX David and Bad Atheist, you're getting some Canadian beaver.